All right, guys, welcome back to the Dr. Medic channel. I did a video a couple weeks ago on the Crash and Learn conference that took place in Bailey, Colorado, which was this really cool outdoor conference for anything medical helicopters, flight paramedics, flight doctors, flight nurses, all the critical care and patient care that goes along with it. It was super, super cool. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I made a stupid little vlog about it, and you can click somewhere down below, up here, whatever, to check it out. But in that video, there were 3 or 4 helicopters in there that I briefly kind of put in there, and I had asked whether or not y'all wanted to maybe do a little bit more of an in-depth review of that helicopter. And a bunch of people said they did, so I'm making this video. This one's going to be on this Bell 407. So stick around, and we'll take a look as soon as we get back. All right, y'all, so welcome back. So like I said, this was taking place at a conference, and you can see me here. I was actually doing a presentation, a very really nerdy presentation on some research. Kind of got interrupted. You can see nobody's looking at me. They're looking up in the sky, and this Bell 407 was landing, and the camera guy shoots up and takes a look at it. We'll look at it in a second. The first person in the comments, which if anybody's able to do it. But if you're able to post in the comments below and you can tell me what this was that I was drawing up here, I'll send you a free t-shirt. But anyway, I'll go ahead and play it, and you can see this thing landing, and it's super, super cool. Sorry if the camera works a little shaky throughout this video. But it's absolutely beautiful, flying over in the Rocky Mountains there in Bailey, Colorado. But this is Air Life, and they've been around the Denver area for nearly 40 years, and were originally based out of Aurora, Colorado, which is just there on the south side of Denver. Look at everybody. They love to see that helicopter. Super, super cool. This is just a different angle of them coming into the same spot. Like I said, they're based out of Aurora, Colorado. And they first flew back in 1983 out of Durango, Colorado, and they were flying in a Bell 206, and then added a fixed wing the following year, I think, in 1984. And they've flown like 65,000 people and really haven't had an incident in almost, 40 years. Currently, they're affiliated with the Health One system of hospitals in almost, 40 years. Currently, they're affiliated with the Health One system of hospitals, and they do both air and ground critical care transport. They've got 4 bases around Colorado, and they even fly into Wyoming and Nebraska, and I think they even go into Kansas. They've got a base at Sky Ridge Medical Center, North Suburban Medical Center, Lincoln Community Hospital, and Melissa Memorial Hospital. And I think their fixed wing is based at Centennial Airport, which might be, it's hard for me to look up, but I think that they have 2 King Air 200 fixed wings. I think the med crew are employed by the hospital, and so this is kind of a hospital-based, kind of a hybrid type service with Air Methods owning and operating the aircraft itself, and the employees being employed by the hospitals. But they also have specialty teams like high-risk OB, as well as neonate teams with nurse practitioners and flight nurses on board. And the ground ambulances are owned and operated by North Glen Ambulance Service. But the cool part is that their ground service is also CAMES accredited, as well as the air service. But this particular Bell 407 that you're looking at is actually a conversion, which is an Eagle HP, which they have, I believe, Air Life has 3 of these, first obtained 5 or 6 years ago. They do have 1 Bell 407, but it normally doesn't operate up in the mountains, so it doesn't need all the big whammy-jammy stuff. But this thing absolutely smokes a regular Bell 407 or an A-Star 350 or a 206 or something like that. I mean, a normal, a regular model Bell 407 has an Allison or Rolls-Royce, whatever you want to call it, 250 C47B turboshaft engine with 813 horsepower, and flies, around 160 miles an hour. That in itself absolutely rips. It absolutely rips. I mean, a Bell 407 is a little Corvette, man. I mean, it's absolutely a hot rod helicopter, especially for EMS. But this is a conversion helicopter, kind of like back in the day when you'd have a Mustang and saline or something like that would convert it and soup it up and stuff like that. This is done by Eagle HP, and they take that 813 horsepower engine and replace it with a Honeywell HTS 900 that puts out 1,020 horsepower, which for a single engine lightweight helicopter is absolutely insane. You see that guy going around there in the background? That guy was such a hard worker all day long, every day. He was just going around emptying the portalets with that little vehicle there. Anyway, super cool watching this thing land, and they're about to shut down now. You listen to them shut down. It's kind of cool. I had my camera on this new gimbal setup, and somebody told me to turn the steady shot off if it was on a gimbal, and I think that was the worst piece of advice I ever got in my life. So it is a little shaky. Won't happen again in the future. Listen to this. Starting it back up again. So in case you're wondering what that was, I talked to the guy, and this pilot is so cool. His name was Toast. I think one of the flight crew members' name was Fork or Spoon or something like that. It was literally written on their name tag. Super cool crew. Anyway, with the higher horsepower, higher output engine from Honeywell, I had originally asked him, did you accidentally hit the starter button? Like, what happened? And he said, no, on these particular engines, they actually it's in their manual that after you shut it down to turn the fuel off and then hold the starter button for 10 to 15 seconds. And basically you're just giving it one last rush of cold air over the turbine. So it doesn't have any overheating problem. And he says he runs into issues all the time at certain landing zones and stuff like that, where people freak out sometimes and they might think that they're starting the engine, but they're only doing it for 10 seconds. And so they're not actually starting the engine. But I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, I'll back it up and you guys can listen to it again as I pan to the right here to look at this Reach former Eagle Med A-Star 350 that's also there. Yep, there he goes, shutting it down again. This helicopter is so cool. So cool. If you want to see me do something on that A-Star 350 from Reach over there, let me know in the comments below too, because I think I have a lot of video of that helicopter as well. So just sitting here looking at the front of it, obviously this helicopter was originally developed out of the Bell 206, which has been around for 187 years. So it looks a lot the same, but it is obviously updated, just a tad bit wider. But sitting here at the front, you can see the battery compartment right there, which is where you would plug in a starter box or an external battery. It does have the wire strike system, which most Bell helicopters do. And that thing's pretty rigid, and it always looks cool that, like, hey, that's going to cut a power line. But I don't know if it's ever been documented that has actually cut a power line and also somehow saved the helicopter. If you know of that, definitely let me know. Say something below. I certainly don't think it has ever happened in an EMS helicopter, but if it's happened in another helicopter, let me know, because that'd be kind of cool. Kind of as you walk around, you can see this bifold door that they have on the left, which, on any Bell 206 or 407, the entire left side seating system is going to be replaced with what's called a sled system. And so that just basically means there's no stretcher in this helicopter, which is kind of a downfall of any of these single engine helicopters like a EC-130 or A-Star 350, 206, 407. They're all going to have some kind of sled system where you can't put like a full-size ambulance stretcher in it. But nonetheless, the front the front pilot door there does still open. You just really don't ever open it for much. I did think it was interesting there that the tail number of this helicopter is not on the tail. It's on the doors there. But anyway, pretty good looking look at the rotor system there. You can see down here that they are CAMES accredited, and that's the CAMES logo. And if you're looking from afar, I think really the only way to really tell that this is the conversion is this hump that you see up here. I mean, obviously it says Eagle 407 on it, but this big hump right here, that is an addition to this conversion kit, and it just makes room for the added engine components that are in there with the Honeywell engine. But as you look inside here, this is pretty standard here as you're looking at this. But there are some things in here that are pretty interesting. Up here, in case we don't know what everything is, I'm kind of just going to point it out. This red thing is going to be their med kit, probably a combined trauma and airway bag. Probably has most of their medicines in it, airway stuff and trauma. They've got a backboard. I don't really know why they have that backboard anymore, because nobody really should be having those anymore, unless you're just using it to move somebody around. But if you want to argue about that in the comments, you can, but the science is clear. Backboards suck. They are no good. This is I forget what the name of this thing's called, this brown thing. When I was flying, we just called it a burrito. It's expensive, but it's the greatest thing ever, because it's so good once your patient is all hooked up to the monitor and IV lines and vent and everything, that you can kind of wrap that around them like a sleeping bag and keep them warm and kind of keep everything contained. This is kind of their sled system here, and it seems like a pretty updated one, because it kind of does slide out of the aircraft a little bit, and it makes loading way easier than it used to be when this system didn't actually fold out of the aircraft at all. But these up here, these are these Braun IV pumps and Fusomats. They're pretty up to date. I mean, they're way better than the iMeds that I remember. If you remember what an iMed is, tell me your worst iMed story below. But these things are pretty good. They function well, but they're attached to this pole here. Everything's always got to be attached somewhere and have some type of FAA approval. So when you hit the brakes or you hit the ground, these things don't fly off and hit you in the head and kill you, because it is a real danger. It's an absolute danger. This looks like a Zoll X Series cardiac monitor. So, I mean, this is the thing that's going to give you the little squiggly lines. It's going to give you your pulse ox and your 4-lead, and be able to do a full 12-lead EKG. It's also a defibrillator. It's also a pacer. It can also cardiovert. And being that these folks are critical care, it probably also has some temperature monitor on it and the ability to monitor arterial waveforms for a more accurate blood pressure measurement. This is obviously their helmet over here. And the really cool thing, the thing that is just absolutely cool about this helicopter is that it's got 4 seats in the back. And most Bell 206s would have only had 2 seats. But because this is just a tad bit wider, and they're able to fit this 3rd seat in there, even during medical transport. But the fact is that they have the horsepower to be able to lift these extra people, which is just absolutely amazing. So let it play for a little bit. This is a big hindrance on any Bell 206 or 407, because once your patient is tucked in here, anything kind of inferior or below this line on the patient's body, it's almost impossible to continue to do an assessment. But that's a structural member kind of going across there, and you can't get rid of it. Before we had the humeral head IOs that go in somebody's shoulder, I did do a tibial IO once in the air on a Bell 206, having to crawl over this in flight, and that was definitely interesting. And my head was all the way down here, just right next to the pilot. It was crazy. Just better look at that sled system under here. This thing, when it unlocks, it kind of slides out up to probably a 50 or 60 degree angle where it slides out of the aircraft a little bit, and then that patient's bed, would be the sled up top, can actually slide and lock into this. This is an oxygen tank. It's medical oxygen. It's probably a D tank, the same size that might be carried on a stretcher or something like that. It's stored in this bottle because it's stored under pressure. I don't know if any Bell 407s have a LOX or a liquid oxygen system on them. If you've ever seen that, let me know. But I don't know if that's been approved yet. But basically, a liquid oxygen system or a LOX system is basically storing oxygen at a much compressed form, but not based on pressure, but based on lower temperature. And then they're able to store it in a liquid form and have a much higher amount of supply of oxygen during flight. This tank right here, it's a 2,200 pound D tank bottle. Won't last very long. They probably have 3 or 4 more stored in the back. They both provide exactly the same oxygen, just one's stored under pressure, one's stored at a reduced temperature. There's those pumps. These things are absolutely awesome. Far more reliable than the iMed system that a lot of places used to carry back in the day. Up here is their comm system. I don't know about you, but in my years as a flight medic, this was always the most difficult part, navigating the channels, because you might have 1 or 2 radios hooked up to this, plus a sat phone, plus your intercom system. And so if you are a newer flight paramedic or a newer flight nurse, I would encourage you to make that your priority to become proficient at the radio use. Oh, it looked like they had 2 bags down there, so they might have like a trauma bag and an airway bag that's kind of separate. Got some equipment that's stored back here, and then this is their back panel where they might have to plug something in. This yellow one is medical air. I don't think anybody uses that for anything. Might be just left over from the past, but up here where this regulator is, and then another spot below it is just where you could add additional oxygen in. And so the aircraft may have, this is probably tied to another tank that's in the back. And then obviously their comm systems plug in right there. More storage underneath their seat there in those little compartments. This back compartment that's right in here might have extra things in there, like certain splints. If they carry blood, I didn't look to see if they carry blood. These guys probably do, because they're a bunch of badasses. Got a lot of extra equipment that they might store back there that obviously they can only get to while they are on the ground. These side fins, I don't know if that's the right term for these, but in the air, that's a quick and easy way, other than seeing that's a 4-bladed system instead of a 2-blade main rotor. The Bell 206 doesn't have these vertical stabilizers here, just the horizontal one. Lovely looking tail rotor. Look how cool this is. We're just out here in the mountains in the middle of nowhere looking at helicopters. So awesome. And getting over here to the fuel tank or the fuel system. And this is a much nicer fuel cap than I remember on the 206. You can see some nice safety wire there. That last video I did on that, did you guys see that crazy video of the helicopter that crashed with the organ transplant on board? And we talked a little bit about safety wiring. So here you see some good safety wiring. And you see how it kind of goes kind of wrapped clockwise around this one, and then almost looks like it's counterclockwise around that one. And the reason is because your safety wiring always has to be done in a manner that is tightening the bolt. So you could never, even though the hole for the safety wire goes through here, you could never put the safety wire in from like the left side of this screw. Not that that's relevant to anything, I'm just sharing it. Pretty cool looking though. So now we're coming over to the other side. You might be wondering like where people sit, and I think on some services it might be pretty strict. The medic sits here, the nurse sits there, or the physician sits here. Most of these services, man, they switch back and forth. Paramedic might sit behind the patient. on one flight, and then they might switch out for the next flight. I will tell you this, though. In a Bell 407, people talk smack all the time that it's difficult to manage the airway of a patient in a helicopter, and that's true in a lot of them, especially in something like an A-Star or even an EC-130. It's very difficult to manage the airway if you don't already have it managed before you get in the air. But on a Bell 206 or a 407, this is like perfect placement. So, I mean, if you needed to intubate or manage take control of somebody's airway in flight, this would be the helicopter to do it. You can also do it pretty easily on any of the aircraft that have like kind of like a captain seat, so something like a BK-117 or an EC-145. But for the smaller helicopters, this is like a perfect setup. This is the Hamilton vent. So this is it's been out for a few years now, starting to become the standard over like the Revels and the LTVs and even some of the Dragers that might be out there. I don't have any experience with this Hamilton vent at all, but I hear nothing but badass things about it. I mean, they all kind of do the same thing, but the computer systems and some of the sensors and stuff like that on the newer models just make it safer to ventilate your patient and stuff like that. So this is the ventilator that would, if the patient that's in the back of the helicopter is on a breathing tube, like is intubated or is on CPAP or BiPAP or something like that, that would be coming and controlled from this vent. Super cool. This is their sharps container. So when they're getting IVs and giving meds and they got to dip out on their sharps, we're going to put it here. That is a yellow mango bubbly unsecured, in case you were wondering. That's probably just a helmet bag there. But again, that's so cool that there's a seat there, because back in the day, these 206s, which are kind of set up the same way, a lot of meds and stuff would be stored there. But it almost looks like if you fly on a Bell 407, I'm curious, in the medical world, could you take two patients or two riders? So like if there was a child on the sled system as the patient, could you take like a mom and a dad, or could you just take one? I mean, I'm sure it's obviously limited to weight, like it is all the time. But assuming that weight is not the biggest limitation, like, have you done that before? Have you taken two extra riders? Because that'd be kind of cool. Just looking at the other side again on the back. And now moving up here to the pilot's compartment. And you can kind of see it's obviously Air Method, so it's got their checklists, a bunch of normal checklists here, his iPad. Now this cockpit is certainly not as up-to-date as it could be. It's not as sweet as like the GX models that would have like the Garmin 1000s and all that, but it still is pretty updated, and it still does have GPS and stuff like that, and TAWS and and a radar altimeter and everything like that. Not that that's a bad thing or anything. It's just not quite as up to date as as the GX, but who cares? It's got 1,020 horsepower. This thing rips. Pretty good look at the radios and the instruments. Absolutely beautiful. Now, this does have an autopilot on it. It's not the most advanced autopilot in the world. And obviously I'm not going to go too far into it because I'm not a pilot, but nonetheless, it at least is enough to be able to hit a button to hold altitude or to hold the heading or something like that, especially if you found yourselves in instrument conditions or something like that. And a lot of the Bell 407s across the country have been outfitted with these autopilots, which is super cool. There's a rotor brake up here, fire extinguisher, some of his comms. Good look at his at the collective there. I do think that it's interesting that even with all this sled system put in, that they left the pedals in on the other side. I guess it's probably just one more thing that they don't have to take out if they need to convert this to dual pilot for checks or something like that. But pedals are still there nonetheless.
Denver Airlines 407. Beautiful.
Yes, absolutely beautiful. All right, so now they're about to take off. These guys were super cool. Like I said, they stayed for a couple hours, hung out with us while we were doing nerdy stuff in the woods. This guy, I think his name was Chris, otherwise known as Razor. In the helicopter world, I think this guy's like a super celebrity. Like he's well known for post crash survival and teaching a lot of folks in third world countries how to operate their helicopter systems and do search and rescue and all that kind of stuff. He's super smart guy. He gave a really cool lecture. But he was the marshal for the day, and he was so that's why he's out there. He's doing a little marshaling. So let's listen to this thing start up and take off. I'm not going to stop it or anything like that. I'm just going to let it play. So you can sit here and watch this beautiful Bell 407 take off. And I think they do a little quick flyover at the end. Forgive me for being a little shaky. Roast me all you want. I'll try to get better in the future. And these guys circled around and did a pretty cool high-speed flyover right over top of us. It was awesome. What a great group of people. Anyway, that's the review. This service is absolutely badass. I know there's a lot of Bell 407s out there, but this is the only one that I know of that's got the Eagle HP for medical, and these guys are flying around in a souped up Ferrari. which is super cool and just helps them get up and over the mountains like crazy. Great group of people, great event. If you want to see more videos doing in-depth reviews of these helicopters and medical helicopters and stuff like that, just let me know below. And if you want me to come out and check out yours and do a more in-depth review, send me an email or hit me up below one way or another. I'd love to do it. Thank you all for watching. Y'all stay safe.